Okay, so this is a review video over basic graphing and then how that relates to maps. We're going to be using that for this week's assignments. Okay, so graphing is something you've been doing for a little while. It's not like it's something new. So normally you have a coordinate plane and you have like an X, which is your horizontal, and a Y, which is generally your vertical. Now we're just doing 2 dimensions because that's how we roll. Okay, so if you have, usually if you want to plot a point, you get a coordinate pair. Okay, so you're given this coordinate pair, and the whole point of this coordinate pair is you want to find something. You're looking for an actual position in space. So graphing is not just because we like drawing pretty pictures on a graph. It's because we're actually trying to locate something, right? So in this case, so we have our coordinate pair. So we have 2, 3, that's our coordinate pair. So the way coordinate pairs work is the first number is always your X, the second number is your Y. So your coordinate pair then is your X comma Y. In this case, 2 comma 3. So to graph that, we would go 2 over to the right, because X goes to the right when it's positive. If your X is negative, it goes left. Okay, so we went over 2, and now our Y value is 3, and Y goes positive when it goes up, and it's negative in the down direction, so we want to go up 3. So I went 2 to the right, up 3, and then I draw my little point. Okay, so then let's say somebody comes along and says, okay, well, your next coordinate, like we're trying to find something, we're doing a treasure map or whatever. Anyway, your next point is, let's say, -3, +1. So in this case, we're going to go, it's a -3, so that means we've got a negative X value. So we're going to go 3 to the left. 1, 2, 3. Our Y value is 1, so that's still positive, so we're going to go up 1. And we put a dot. And then let's say we have another one that's like -4, -2. We would go 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left. And this time we're going to go down 2 and we'd put a dot. Now if we're actually making a shape or we're actually making a path, then what we would do is we would connect those. So since we started, our very first one that we started with was our 2, 3, we're going to go from there to the next one. So we connect it with a line, and then we're going to go from that second point to the third point. So it ended up going like that. Okay, so that's just basic graphing. So this next slide is a very basic and ugly pretend house plan, right? So graphs relate to the real world. So if you're going to build a house, like what the contractors do or what the main contractor does is he has all these blueprints, and they're set on a scale and they put them on a grid. So they say, okay, well, we need to make measurements, but we need to start from somewhere, because you can't just show up in the middle of somewhere and be like, oh, well, okay, yeah, this looks like 2, 5, that'll work. You need an actual scale. So what they'll do is they'll go, okay, well, you know what, just for building's sake, this corner right here is going to be our origin. That's our 0, 0. And everything else is going to be based off of that. So then go in this direction, we're going to have our X. And go in this direction, we'll have our Y. And when we measure things, we'll do it that way. So like, let's say I need to know where to put the drain for the bathtub. Well, then I can measure it off this scale. So let's say this is, maybe these marks are like 10 feet each because this is a very small house. So that would be 20. So then maybe our drain is at 24 to the right. And then let's say it's 15 wide. Well, our drain's a little bit in from that, say like 1 foot in. So our drain then, because you have to, they have to plumb things in before, like when they're getting ready to pour the foundation, they already have to have their pipes for their drains all set. So they need to know where to put those. So our drain then is 24 to the right and 14 up. So we're going to call that 14. So then our coordinates would be 24, 14. So what they would do is they'd say, hey, look, Mr. Plumber, this is our origin. This is where we need our drain. We need it at 24, 14. And then they know where to put the pipe. Okay, so that's just standard graphing. Next, though, we're going to relate it to maps. Okay, so we also need some kind of a graphing technique for maps because we want to know, where we are, right? So they set this up a long time ago, and they said, okay, well, we'll call this, because you need a 0, 0, we'll say, okay, or you need axes, right? we'll call this right here, this horizontal one, that's our equator. So our x-axis, when it's a map, is called the equator. This is just a review too. Okay, and then, but we need a y-axis, right? So the y-axis is a little bit trickier. When they were doing all the exploration, it was the English that were primarily doing the mapping, like the English, and then some of the Italians and Spanish were involved too, but the English were the big ones when it came to mapping. So if you're the one in charge of something, then you can set it wherever you want. So what they did is they set this y-axis heading straight down through England, and what it's called a prime meridian. Okay, so this point right here, off the coast of West Africa, that's our origin. This is our 0, 0. Let me make it out a little bit darker so you can see it better. This is the 0, 0. So then when we're navigating, we need to know where, right? So like say we're in Galveston. We're going to use Galveston as an example because, you know, it's the closest thing to the coast right here. So this is Galveston. Here, I'll label that. So let's say you want to sail a boat, right? And you start out in England and you want to know where to go to get to Galveston. Then, like here you are, and Galveston's where you want to be. You need to know the coordinates. So we're going to go all the way over there, right? So again, you have a coordinate pair. In this case, it's a little bit different. So it's like normal mapping, except that they switch it a little bit. So the coordinates in the y direction, so this is north, this is south, this would be your east, and this is west. So normal graphing, you have x, y, right? Your horizontal comes first and then your vertical. When you put that on a map, it's switched. So coordinate pairs on a map. So on a map, they're switched. You have your vertical component first and then your horizontal. So you're basically, your coordinate pair is like yx instead. Whereas on a graph, it's xy. So Galveston is located at 29 degrees north, 95 west. It's got some decimals in there I rounded just to make it easy. That's where Galveston is. So notice it's 29 degrees north. That means I did my vertical first. So here's my equator, and here's my prime meridian. So I went up 29, and then I went to the west 95. So on a map you can say this two different ways, like when you're going left and right. So if you're going to the left, you usually say 95 degrees west, because it's 95 degrees and we're going towards the west. And also notice that the distance is in degrees. This is degrees, more like an angle, less like temperature. So if you were going to the east, so say you were going over here somewhere, then that would be east. So you might have 95 east. I'm not sure if that's I'm just guessing, but we'll just pretend. Anyway, if you go to the right, you add an E for east. If you go to the left, you add a W for west. Now, some things like sometimes on GPS or sometimes like engineers and stuff will switch it and they'll just call it negative 95. So you might see it say 29 north, 95 west, or you could see it 29, 95. If you see 95 here and there's no west, then that means to the east. So in this case, since we're going west, you can add a negative. So it would be 29, comma, negative 95. That tells us it's going towards the east. Over here, this would be 29 north, 95 east, or 29, 95. Either one of those will work. Generally, like if we're doing hurricane type stuff, we use this one. If you are doing like engineering classes or whatever, you'll use that one. But they both mean the same thing. So just remember that if you're mapping stuff or if you're plotting points on a graph, that it's the vertical first and then the horizontal.